The text came in just as I was helping Maisie tie her shoelaces on the entryway rug. She was rambling about which swimsuit to pack for the lake, sparkles or stripes, while Micah sat cross-legged on the couch with his fishing manual spread open like it was sacred scripture. I didn't look at my phone right away. We were already running behind for school, and Maisie had somehow knotted one lace into a full-blown pretzel. But the vibration buzzed again, insistent. I picked it up with one hand, smoothing her laces with the other. It was from Mom. "Need to talk, honey. Call when you can." My stomach dropped, but I swallowed it down. "Let's go, guys." After drop-off, I parked under the same shady elm in the elementary lot and called her back, letting the Bluetooth kick in. My coffee was still hot, forgotten in the cup holder. "Sweetheart," she answered, her voice in that sugary, soft tone she used when bad news was coming dressed in pearls. I braced myself. "I've been crunching numbers for the annual lake trip," she said. "And well, with everything being so expensive lately, we just can't swing it this year, not with all the extras." Extras. That meant Micah and Maisie, my kids. I blinked at the windshield where dried pollen clung like dust on old memories. "I can chip in more," I said quickly, hating how needy I sounded. "Business is finally picking up. We could cover our part." "Oh no, we couldn't ask that of you," Mom said, all light and gentle. "Besides, Caroline already suggested we skip it all together this year. Give everyone's wallets a break." Of course Caroline suggested it. Caroline, who never had to watch her wallet because Bentley did it for her. Caroline, whose kids had monogrammed towels at the lake house. I cleared my throat. "Right, thanks for letting me know." That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Emails first. Then I let my fingers drift toward the inevitable. Facebook. I shouldn't have clicked. I know that now. But I did. The first photo stopped me cold. Caroline, tagged at a cruise terminal. Behind her, a banner fluttered in the breeze. "Family first." Setting sail. I scrolled. There was Mom, lifting a champagne flute next to Gerald, my dad. Caroline's kids wore matching captain's hats. Spencer smiled like a magazine ad. And there, front and center, was the caption, "Making memories with the ones who matter most." My heart stuttered. I clicked through each photo like I was peeling back an old wound. Mom holding Caroline's baby, Dad showing Caroline's boys how to play shuffleboard, exactly the way he'd taught me, once, years ago. My phone buzzed. "Sandra, are you seeing this? Call me." I couldn't call. I couldn't breathe. Each picture was another quiet confirmation. They hadn't canceled the trip because of money. They'd canceled me. Micah wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "What are you looking at?" "Just some grown-up stuff," I said, slamming the laptop closed. He yawned. "Do we still get to go to the lake?" I opened my mouth, closed it. My voice wouldn't come. "Maybe next year," I managed. "We'll definitely go next year." After tucking them back in, I stepped onto the back porch with a glass of red wine and the heavy Colorado dusk folding in around me. The crickets were already playing their nightly concert. Across the alley, porch lights flickered on one by one. I pulled out the old family photo from last summer, still stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a trout. Everyone was smiling. The lake shimmered behind us. And me? I was standing slightly apart, like I always did, holding Maisie on my hip. Her face was turned toward the water, mine toward the camera. The gap between us and the rest of them was small, but it was there. It had always been there. I left the photo on the table and walked to the hall closet. Under piles of beach towels and snow boots, I found the plastic bin labeled lake stuff. Inside, neatly packed from the year before, were 2 sun hats, a bottle of half-used sunscreen, and a paper notebook with a glittery rainbow on the cover, Maisie's Lake Journal. She'd drawn a picture of the fish she wanted to catch, complete with cartoon eyes and a smile. Underneath, she'd written, in shaky print, "I hope we catch the biggest fish ever." Next to it was Micah's brand new fishing rod, still wrapped in cellophane, still tagged. I sat down right there on the hallway carpet, holding the rod like it was some sacred relic. The plastic crinkled beneath my hands. It wasn't just a trip they had canceled. It was a chance, a belonging, a tradition that was supposed to include us, but never really had. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just felt still, like the part of me that kept hoping finally went quiet. Later that night, after double-checking their school bags and kissing them goodnight, I stood in their doorway. The moonlight poured through the blinds like brushed silver. Maisie mumbled something in her sleep. Micah turned, clutching his pillow tighter. I stepped into the room and whispered, "I promise." My voice barely reached the air. "We will never be left behind again." The receptionist handed me a lanyard with a plastic badge that read, "E. Maddox, Navitrack." I clipped it to my blazer with fingers that only barely stopped trembling. Harper was already in the elevator, humming softly like she always did when she was trying not to spiral. The glass lobby sparkled like something out of a minimalist museum, sleek and polished, smelling faintly of citrus and quiet money. I tried not to imagine how many founders had stood in these same heels, hoping their voices didn't shake, hoping their ideas sounded like solutions, not dreams. "You okay?" Harper asked, pressing the elevator button again, though it was already lit. I nodded. "Fake it till we fund it." She grinned. "Let's go make them believe." The 17th floor conference room was all glass and chrome and ego. The skyline of Denver unfolded behind the panel, jagged with ambition. 3 men and 1 woman sat at the table, each with a leather-bound notepad and eyes that said they'd already heard too many pitches today. After a round of tight-lipped introductions, I placed the prototype gently in the center of the table. It looked small, almost silly under the industrial lighting, but I knew what it could do. I also knew what it had cost me to build it. "I'd like to start with a story," I said, voice steadier than I expected. 3 years ago, my son Micah disappeared. That got their attention. We were at the Boulder Mall. I turned to pay for sneakers, and when I looked back, he was gone. 17 minutes passed before security found him behind a kiosk near the loading dock. I could still remember the exact sensation in my chest, like the air had calcified. A security guard had asked, "Do you have a recent photo?" And I'd fumbled with my phone, hands shaking, praying the last picture wasn't from 2 birthdays ago. "My son was safe," I said, "but I wasn't. After that, I couldn't walk into a store without holding his hand like a lifeline." I paused, watching their faces. No one looked away. I searched for tools to help. What I found were clunky, obvious, and easy for a kid to remove, so I made something better. Harper passed around pamphlets while I slid the sleek band across the table. Navitrack is waterproof, tamper-proof, and designed to look like a bracelet any kid would want to wear. One panelist raised an eyebrow. "Looks like something from a tech toy line." "That's the point," I said. "Kids won't take off what they think they chose." Questions followed. Battery life, app interface, data security. I answered everyone like it was a final exam, because it was. We'd stayed up late rehearsing, Harper and I, trading off questions while eating boxed mac and cheese at my dining table. There'd been tears, then laughter, then more caffeine. I thought about those nights now, as I watched the investor with the sharpest tie turn the bracelet over in his palm. And then came the question I knew would land like a punch. What makes you the right person to bring this to market? I didn't blink. Because I'm not just a founder. I'm a mother who lived the fear, and I built the solution I couldn't find. I'm not here to pitch a gadget. I'm here to protect children and the families who don't want to learn the hard way. Silence. Then the woman with the minimalist haircut nodded once, then again. That was the moment I knew. We shook hands. They said they'd be in touch, but I already felt it. Harper was vibrating beside me as we stepped back into the elevator. Once the doors closed, she lost it. "Evelyn!" she stage whispered. "They said yes. I could see it. They're in. 5 million. You nailed it." I didn't respond right away. I was still coming down from the adrenaline spike. But as we walked through the lobby and out into the sunshine, it hit me. We had done it. We'd built something real. 15 minutes later, we were in a noisy, chaotic pizza parlor downtown, surrounded by clashing birthday songs, spilled soda, and a line of kids waiting to redeem arcade tickets. Our booth had torn vinyl, and the lights flickered slightly overhead. "Let's never stop coming to places like this," Harper said, toasting me with a slice so greasy it dripped. "It keeps us honest." I smiled and clinked my crust against hers. I let myself have 2 full slices before I checked my phone. 47 unread messages, a few congratulations from mutual friends, a "we're proud of you" from my old boss, and then one subject line that made the air around me freeze. FWD Turner Pines Inquiry. Urgent. Danielle had forwarded it from her real estate firm. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a thread. A real estate agent named Clive had inquired about reserving the entire Turner Pines resort for 8 weeks next summer. Exclusive family access only. No outside guests. Client name, Spencer Whitaker, my sister's husband. I read it twice, then again. They weren't just going back to the lake. They were booking the whole place. No extra rooms needed this time, because there would be no extras. No Evelyn, no Micah, no Maisie. My slice went cold in my hand. "You okay?" Harper asked, mouth full of crust. I nodded automatically. Just thinking. But inside, something tilted, shifted, locked into place. I looked out the window at the park across the street where a little boy ran laughing through the fountain jets. The sun was bright. The city was alive. And suddenly, so was something in me. "I won't let them lock us out again," I whispered. This time, I meant it. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into Turner Pines for the first time in years. A thin layer of dust coated the wooden sign at the entrance. The words, "Welcome to Turner Pines," faded, but still legible. It was the same sign I'd stood under in childhood photos, Caroline front and center, me tucked off to the side, holding a towel too big for my frame. Late summer heat hung in the air like a blanket. The lake was calm, its surface glassy under the afternoon sun. Pine needles coated the edges of the path, and the breeze carried their scent. Earthy, nostalgic. Ray Valdez stood on the porch of the main lodge with a mug in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. His weathered face broke into a small smile as I stepped out of the car. "Ms. Maddox?" he asked, extending a hand. "Just Evelyn, please." I shook it firmly. "Thanks for meeting me on short notice." "Not often we get folks asking to tour the whole property," he said, nodding toward the path. "You looking to book a cabin?" I met his eyes. "Number, I'm here to buy the whole place." He raised his eyebrows but didn't laugh, just took a slow sip from his mug and nodded once. "Well," he said, "you'd better come inside." We sat in the lodge's front room where time seemed to have paused somewhere around 1997. A faded photo of a family roasting marshmallows hung near the fireplace. The cushions sagged in familiar places. I remembered those couches, remembered watching Caroline drape herself across them, holding court like summer royalty. Ray poured a second cup of coffee and handed it to me. "You're not the first interested party, just so you know." I sipped, waiting. "Got a guy, Spencer Whitaker, trying to secure an 8-week exclusive for next summer," he continued. "Said it was for a private family retreat, offered above market." "They're mine," I said simply, setting the mug down. Ray tilted his head. Didn't expect that. I reached into my tote and slid a folder across the table. Danielle had prepared everything: preliminary offer, intent to purchase, financials. The LLC was clean, my name nowhere visible on the surface. Ray flipped through the pages slowly, the paper whispering secrets between us. "Well, this is substantial," he murmured, "and clean. I'd like to keep you on as manager," I added, "with a raise." He looked up, surprised. "That generous or that confident?" "Both," I said, "but mostly committed." Ray leaned back in his chair, studying me. May I ask, what's really driving this? Outside the window, a pair of ducks glided across the lake, leaving perfect ripples in their wake. I've always been the guest here, I said quietly, even when I was supposed to belong. I want this to be home, on our terms, for my kids, for people like us. He didn't press further, just nodded, then stood. Let's walk. We strolled past the old cabins, their wood siding peeling slightly but still sturdy. The screen doors creaked the way I remembered. The path curved down to the fire pit where I'd once sat, roasting marshmallows while Caroline's kids got the best skewers. I walked slower near cabin 7, her favorite, the one Mom always saved for the babies, even when mine were younger. Its shutters were closed now, sun-faded green. Maisie would probably paint them pink if I let her. At the dock, Ray stood back while I stepped forward. The water lapped softly against the wood. A dragonfly hovered, then darted away. I closed my eyes for a second and listened, not to the silence, but to the absence of judgment, exclusion, expectation. For the first time in years, this place felt quiet in the right way. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out. Danielle. I answered without hesitation. Ready to make this official? She asked. I exhaled slowly, eyes still on the lake. Let's do it. Quietly. Behind me, Ray didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I knew he understood. As we walked back toward the lodge, I felt something strange press against my ribs. It took me a moment to recognize it. Steadiness. No righteous anger, no desperation, just a simple, clean alignment between what I wanted and what I was doing. Maisie had once drawn a crayon picture of a cabin surrounded by trees, a bright pink sun in the corner, and stick figures holding hands on the dock. Underneath, she'd scrawled, "A place just for us." That place was becoming real now, and it was mine. They always said I was too sensitive. When Caroline mocked me for crying during my own birthday party, when I got sent back inside for wearing old flip-flops to the lake while she paraded new sandals from Nordstrom, when I stood behind the screen door at 9, watching everyone else play tag because my outfit wasn't picture-worthy. That day, Mom offered me a weak smile and said, "Next time, try wearing something nicer, okay?" So I stopped telling them when it hurt, and I started acting on it instead. On a brisk Thursday in early April, I walked the perimeter of Turner Pines with Ray before the paperwork was signed. The lake was low, the trees still shaking off winter. It smelled like pine, soil, and something ancient, something mine now. "This place is quieter than I remember," I said, stepping over a patch of moss near cabin 2. Ray chuckled. "Kids aren't here yet. Summer's when it really hums." I ran my fingers along the railing of the dock, and next summer it'll hum a little differently. He looked over, brow lifted. I didn't elaborate. When I got home that afternoon, the kids were at Sandra's. I brewed a pot of coffee that went cold untouched and spread the legal documents across the dining table. The deed, the LLC paperwork, Danielle's letters. It felt like a chessboard, each piece positioned, waiting. Danielle arrived 10 minutes later, already talking. Ray confirmed the walkthrough. "Good. These are your copies, and this," she tapped a tabbed folder, "contains all 6 exclusion notices, legal, binding, and enforceable. You ready?" I stared at the page that made it official. The signature line stared back. I thought of all the times I'd felt like a guest in my own memories, the way my name always ended up at the bottom of the group chat, the way Mom's voice always softened when she said Caroline's name, but tensed slightly before mine. "I've been ready since I was 9, I said. Danielle slid me her fountain pen. I signed in one breath, letting the ink dry before handing it back. We didn't toast. It didn't feel like that. "This will cause noise," she said, almost gently. "You okay with that?" "I'm not asking permission," I said, "just drawing the line." She nodded once. "My process server is already scheduled for 8:30 p.m. Caroline's family has a dinner reservation at that French place on Larimer. They'll get the envelopes as they're leaving valet." Efficient, I murmured. That's what you're paying me for. By evening, the house was too quiet. I stood in the kitchen with a glass of water, watching the golden light stretch across the hardwood. The dishwasher hummed. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's wind chimes tangled with the breeze. At exactly 8:47, my phone buzzed. Process server. All notices delivered. Reactions varied. One envelope torn open on sight. I could picture it clearly. Caroline frowning, confused at first, then affronted. Spencer reading the fine print with a sneer. Diane blinking rapidly, voice rising just enough to make strangers stare. Gerald muttering something useless and neutral. Then the wave hit. Calls, voicemails, texts, emails. What is this? You're overreacting. Is this really what you want your kids to learn from you? We included you as much as we could. You were always difficult. This is beneath you. Please call. That one was from Mom. I didn't call. I didn't even cry. Instead, I opened the fridge, took out the bottle of sparkling water I'd been saving for no occasion in particular, and poured it into the fancy glass Caroline had once said wasn't dishwasher safe enough for her registry. Outside, the porch creaked. I stepped out barefoot, the chill biting but clarifying. The phone buzzed again. This time, a push alert from Turner Pine's new security system. I tapped it open and watched the feed. Spencer. He was stalking the lakefront like a man who couldn't quite believe the doors were locked. He rattled the knob on cabin 3, peered through the dining hall window, kicked at a loose board near the dock. His face was tight. He looked entitled. A second later, a text came in from Ray. Want me to call the police? I watched Spencer squat near the fire pit, pick up a stick, and toss it absently into the brush, like he was waiting for something or someone to give him permission to blow past the boundaries. Not yet, I replied. Let them cross the line first. Ray sent a thumbs-up emoji, and I smiled. The man was old school, but he understood something essential. There's a difference between retaliation and resolve. That night, I tucked the kids into bed without checking my messages again. Maisie had drawn a new picture. Turner Pines with a rainbow overhead and a sign on the gate that read, "Only good people allowed." She didn't know about the notices, but somehow she already understood. In bed, I lay in the dark with the image of Spencer's face paused on the security footage. Not angry, not desperate, just surprised. They were all surprised. Surprised that I had followed through. Surprised that I had made something mine. Surprised that I had finally stopped asking and started enforcing. What they called sensitivity had always been something else, perception. And now that I trusted it, I didn't need their validation. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the gatekeeper. "If you bought this place to hurt them," the reporter said, squinting into the morning sun, "I think you succeeded." I kept my eyes on the lake, letting the silence stretch. Then I turned to him and said evenly, "I didn't buy it to hurt anyone. I bought it so no one else would feel what I did." The air was thick with 4th of July heat. Flags fluttered along the roadside. Families walked by with coolers and children in swimsuits. And just off the main dock at Turner Pines, a camera crew was setting up tripods like they were about to film a nature documentary. Only this one featured my family's implosion. The call had come from Danielle 2 days earlier. Local papers sending a reporter. Caroline pitched them a redemptive family legacy piece. Thought you should know. I'd laughed. Of course she did. She's making you out to be bitter, selfish. They're calling it the sister who bought the lake. Let them. But then the phone buzzed again and the reporter, Jason Ames, sent an email requesting my side. Neutral tone. Professional. I asked Danielle if it was a trap. Number, it's an opportunity. So I agreed. That morning, I wore jeans and a navy linen blouse. No designer logos, no makeup artist. Just me. Micah and Maisie were off at their day camp for single-parent families, the very program we'd be launching next summer. The lake shimmered, oblivious to the tension it reflected. I arrived late on purpose. Caroline was already mid-sentence when I stepped onto the dock. Of course, we never meant to exclude her. Evelyn's always been private. A little difficult, yes, but we love her. Jason turned, catching sight of me. Ms. Maddox, thank you for joining us. Please, I said, call me Evelyn. I walked past Caroline, ignoring the stiffness in her shoulders. Diane and Gerald stood a few feet back, hands folded, faces pale. Jason gestured to the bench. We'd love your perspective. I sat down and looked into the lens. Most people think family traditions are about love, I said, but for some of us, they're about reminders, who gets to belong and who doesn't. Caroline shifted. Evelyn, this isn't the time. No, I said gently. This is exactly the time. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. This is a copy of the email where Spencer requested exclusive booking for this property. 8 weeks. No outside guests. That was 2 days after I was told the lake trip was canceled due to budget cuts. Jason flipped through the pages. His eyes widened slightly. These are photos from a family cruise I wasn't invited to, I continued, laying out the printed screenshots. That's my mother, my father, Caroline, their children. Hashtags include family only and no extras this year. Caroline made a strangled sound and reached for her phone. The cameraman caught it all. Jason looked at me. So, what did you do? I bought the lake, I said, and I turned it into something better. I handed him another packet. We're launching a nonprofit here. Summer programming for children of single-parent families. Sliding scale. No one turned away, because growing up, I always felt like there wasn't enough room for me. I turned toward the camera, so I made room. Not just for me, for everyone. Jason cleared his throat. Why not just invite your family back, now that you own it? I held his gaze. Because they never asked to come in the first place. They expected it. Behind him, Caroline's face was tight with fury. Diane looked like she might cry. Gerald was texting. Classic avoidance. You could have just forgiven them, Caroline muttered. I did, I said. This is what forgiveness looks like. Not pretending it didn't happen, but making sure it doesn't happen again. Jason leaned in slightly. And what would you say to people who think this was revenge? I thought of the old video clip I'd found last week, one of those dusty home movies digitized on a USB, my 7th birthday. The candles were lit, everyone clapping. Caroline swooped in, grinning, and blew them out. Everyone laughed. I hadn't. My smile had faded just as the video cut off. I'd say revenge is about pain, I replied. This is about clarity. About building something new with clean hands. Jason nodded slowly. Thank you, Evelyn. We appreciate your time. I stood and walked past Caroline without a word. As I reached the edge of the dock, Jason called after me. Just one last question. I paused. What do you call this place now? I smiled. Home. That night, after I'd tucked the kids in and folded the last load of laundry, I found an envelope wedged inside my mailbox. No stamp, just handwriting I recognized immediately. Mom's. I opened it. Inside was a single sentence written on monogrammed paper. You've broken this family. We hope it was worth it. I didn't hesitate. I lit the fireplace, struck a match, and fed the letter into the flames. It curled and blackened, then disappeared. Not out of anger, out of understanding. Some bridges don't burn accidentally. Some you light yourself with quiet hands and a clear heart. We didn't get their lake trip, Micah said, nudging a marshmallow deeper into the fire's orange glow. I handed him a graham cracker. No, I said, watching the flames flicker in his glasses. We got something better. He looked up. We got our own tradition. The lake reflected streaks of lavender and rust as the sun dipped behind the tree line. Paddleboards leaned against the dock like resting sentinels. The campfire crackled beside us, surrounded by kids, some laughing over ghost stories, others pressing sticky hands into s'mores like it was an art form. Turner Pines was no longer their legacy. It was ours. It had taken months of work, dozens of volunteers, and a quiet kind of courage that didn't come with applause. But here we were, the first summer session of our camp for single-parent families in full swing. Cabin 7, which Caroline once claimed like a crown jewel, was now the community center. Its walls were covered in artwork, daily schedules, and welcome signs drawn in crayon. A bulletin board read, "You belong here." Earlier that morning, I'd passed through the cabin and caught Maisie showing another little girl where the board games were kept. "We can play after lunch," she said, "unless you want to go kayaking first." The girl, no more than 6, clutched a towel and nodded shyly. Micah had spent the afternoon helping Ray teach casting techniques by the dock. One of the new boys had caught a fish smaller than a sandwich, but the cheers that erupted made it feel like a world record. The day before, Micah had caught his own, a bass, maybe 14 inches long. He beamed when I helped him hold it for a photo. "Just like you taught me," he said proudly. That moment had stopped me cold, because in all the years I'd spent waiting for someone to show me what mattered, I hadn't realized I'd already become the one doing the teaching. That evening, Danielle arrived for a surprise check-in. She handed me a slim envelope with no return address. "I debated opening it myself," she said, "but it's not mine." Inside was an old photograph. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mom's. The picture showed me, maybe 7 or 8, sitting alone at the edge of the dock. My knees were pulled into my chest, a fishing pole balanced awkwardly across them. My eyes weren't looking at the camera, they were looking toward the horizon, as if searching for someone who never came. The note on the back read, "I found this while packing. You caught your first fish that day. I was helping Caroline bake cookies. I'm sorry I wasn't there, I missed it, and I missed a lot more." I didn't cry. I took the photo, found a frame in the storage shed, and placed it near the fireplace in cabin 7. Next to it, I added a photo of Micah holding his fish and Maisie grinning with a clipboard in hand that read, "Camp Lunch Captain." Later that day, my phone buzzed. "Gerald, we saw the news. The story. Everything. We're proud of what you've made. I'm sorry we were late." I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because, for once, I didn't need to explain myself. The silence between us wasn't hollow anymore. It was just peace. That night, after the kids were tucked in, after the last paper lantern floated over the lake, I walked out onto the dock alone. My sandals dangled from one hand. The planks were warm from the day's sun, and the breeze smelled like firewood and pine. The lake was full. Still. Mine. I thought about all the years I stood at its edge, just outside the frame, watching Caroline get the bigger kayak, the better marshmallow stick, the louder praise. And now, it didn't matter, because this place, this moment, was built from something far stronger than legacy. It was built from choice. I heard soft steps behind me. Maisie appeared in her pajamas, clutching her journal. "Mom." She held up a page. It was a drawing of the lake with dozens of kids lining the shore. "Can we invite more kids next summer?" she asked, eyes wide, hopeful. I pulled her close, kissed her temple. "That's the plan." We stood there together, the stars blooming overhead, the water breathing slow and steady below us. I used to think healing meant forgetting, but I was wrong. Healing meant remembering, and still choosing to build something better. That night, as my daughter and I stood on the dock, her small hand wrapped in mine, we watched the stars shimmer over the water. No one was left behind. No one had to beg for space in someone else's story anymore. What I've learned is this. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from being welcomed back. It comes from creating something new, something kinder. When we stop waiting to be chosen and begin choosing others, we build a life not on bitterness, but on belonging. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, know this: you're not alone, and you're not powerless. Sometimes the most beautiful legacies begin right where someone once shut the door. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Because maybe, just maybe, sharing is how we make room for each other again.